Great. I think pulpits are for preachers. I'm not a preacher. So I will leave it for Moose. Isn't it great to be part of a church where your lead elder can dance? Did you see those videos? Yeah, we're a church that loves to have fun. And when you look at these pictures, you just see people just having fun. And that's what life is about. It's just living life together. And as I reflected on this verse, this chapter we've been going through, and we're talking about the early believers, the one thing I thought as I sort of reflected on it is, these are people who probably also had fun together, right?
Yeah.
I don't think people would come and join them simply because they were a boring crowd. They were probably a very fun crowd, much like we are today. So think of yourself, even as you read this verse, think of this community, what we are about, and what we, all these things that we're seeing, the advance. I really love the notices today. You get a sense of a church that is moving forward, of a people that's looking to God and saying, God, where can we go? And really, that's what Steve Tibbet brought to us last week when he spoke about, this idea of a movement of people, of a people who are missional in their approach. It was a deeply apostolic message, a message from a father to sons and daughters, really calling them to the mission that God has placed in front of them. And what I love about what God is doing is, it's like a story. And we get to be part of this unfolding story of what God is doing across the world. And when you hear what is happening in the New Frontiers family, churches being birthed, persecution in different countries across the world, and what Christians and believers are doing in those contexts, for me, it really stirs my heart to know that I am just part of something that is much, much bigger than myself, and God is doing something. And believing God and seeing what God is doing just really encourages me. And we saw this morning, what's happening at Westgate, how we're looking at moving from 2 to 3 sites, and this idea of God expanding his kingdom, God forcefully advancing the kingdom. And we get to have the privilege to be part of what God is doing. Isn't that great, church?
Yeah.
That you and I, ordinary people like you and me, if you know me, I don't consider myself special. I don't know if you're special, but, I get to be part of this great thing that God is doing, and I feel less than, I feel privileged. I don't feel like this is something that, God says, this is the right guy, he's met all the standards. It's just really by God's grace that we get to be part of what God is doing. Today we turn to something very special, something that we all do most of the time in our lives, which is we all go to work. And think of work not as the place where, you arrive at a certain place, perhaps maybe at the end of the month they give you a paycheck. Work can also be that which you do on a daily basis. Whatever you do, consider that to be work. Whether it is paid or unpaid, whether you have an employer or you don't have an employer, it is work. It is what God has placed for you to do. Whatever that is your station, that is your work. That is what God has put as the purpose for your life. And I'd like to talk a little bit this morning about purpose and how it ignites us as a community to serve God in a way that honors what God has placed in us. So this is us. When you look at these pictures, this is us. In our workplaces as well, we are called to be people who witness Christ in an amazing way wherever we go. So we've been going through this series based on Acts 2, which is coming from verse 42 to 47. And I'll just restate some of the things that the early believers were about. They were a community, and as I say this, you can see the verses up there. They were a community that were about meeting together, listening to teaching, being in fellowship with one another, breaking bread, having everything in common, really just looking after one another, selling their possession, just showing their level of commitment to what God was doing amongst them. And they say they met in the temple courts. And I can imagine the temple courts would have been pretty much like we are today. A time to listen to Scripture, to hear God's word, and really be envisioned for what God was going to do through them. But today I'll focus on the last part, which says, they broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And I'll double click on enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number those that were being saved. And the favor of people came because they were a community that was outward looking, that was about loving the people that were around them, that was about embracing the community. And I'm sure in their context as well, just as in the context that we live in, even when you look at when Paul preaches, it talks about many people of many tribes and tongues. There were many different people, probably from different contexts, different background, and possibly of different political persuasions, different, and also probably different faiths as well. Remember, at the time, there were many gods that people served, and there were many different religions. So these were people who were coming from a very, very different backgrounds. And that is much like us in our society today. We have different political persuasions, we have different backgrounds, we have different races, but we all come together as one community to serve one God. But the great thing about them is, even though they were so diverse, they were one people in terms of being of one heart and of one mind as a community of believers. So much so that those that were impacted and influenced by who they were added, as it says, daily, as they witnessed to different people. So as we speak about work today, I've just defined what is work. But think of work in this context as well. You're a mother, you're a father. That is work as well. God has put you at a certain station. You may be a teacher and you're teaching children. You're a caregiver. And remember, work is not what we do even for those that are facilitating on a Sunday. That is in a sense work. But that goes beyond even what we're doing on a Sunday. And Steve Tibbet said this last week, that as a missional community, a church derives its identity, its priorities, and its agenda from a participation in the mission of what God is doing in the world. And I love that about that definition, that we are about a mission of what God is doing in the world. Charles Spurgeon, one of the great theologians of our modern times, had this to say: every Christian is a missionary, or they're an imposter. I found that hit me quite hard because it's a very simple statement, but what it's saying to all of us is the mission, the Christian life is about mission. It's about going to seek and save those who are lost. It's not about comfort. It's not about, the prosperity message that we hear today. It's about what God has said to us, that the gospel is good news to the poor. And we went through the series on the good news, and we all remember what good news means. So for us, I have three key things that I would like to say, which are key three truths about work and our places of work, and what God has called us to do or to be in those places. The first of those is that work is relational. So turn to your neighbor and say, work is relational. And why do we say that? It's because at every place of work, you're going to meet people. You're going to meet people who have hopes, who have dreams, who have disappointments, who have hurts, and people whom God has taken through different journeys in their life. But God calls us to those people. And sometimes the reason that they're in our lives in the work context is because God has placed them there for a reason. And God has also placed us where those people are for a reason. One thing Jesus took, if you notice, one of the things he did very well is even when he was going about whatever he was doing, and you could imagine he was someone who was sent to redeem the whole world. You would think this was a busy guy. He has a mission. He has something important to achieve, but he took time. And one of my greatest ever stories in the Bible is when he meets the woman at the well. And in that story, Jesus is by himself. He sent the disciples somewhere. He meets this woman, and he asks her to bring a husband. And she says, but I have no husband. And Jesus says, you are right. You have 5 husbands. You've had 5 husbands. The one you're with is not your husband. But what I loved about that story is what happens at the end. And when it says that when that woman went into the Samaritan village, it ends with the words that says, the village believed Jesus because of the testimony of this one woman.
Yes.
So the testimony of who we are. And remember, this was a broken person. It was not a person whom you would say, this is the example of what a Christian life is like. This is a woman who had had 5 husbands. But as we know, the story of this Samaritan woman is what causes the transformation of a whole village of people. Her story becomes a redemptive story. And Jesus uses it in an amazing way to turn a people who had enmity with the Jews into a people that believed in the message that had come from the Jewish people, this message of a Messiah. So Jesus teaches us this truth of humility, of kindness, even in our place of work. And he encourages us that whatever we do, we must always be relational in how we interact with anyone that comes into our place of work. And that may be a customer, that may be a colleague, it may be a competitor for that matter. And in business, we all know the business is a pressure cooker. If you want to see someone's character, put them under pressure. And in business, we are constantly under pressure. Either pressure to achieve targets. You know, we always joke sometimes in our meetings about KPIs, if you know what that means, key performance indicators. And we're always judged to a standard. You must meet a certain level of performance. And if you meet that level of performance, you know what happens? It gets increased, so your KPI gets increased. So you're always chasing a standard or a level of performance, and it is very, very difficult. And in those meetings or in those contexts, you come across difficult situations where perhaps things have not worked out the way that you want them to. You've dropped the ball in some instances, but it's in those instances that your grace under pressure shines through, where God is demonstrated to the people that are around you. And I can say I've been in many contexts like this where many things have gone wrong. If you are in the business of business, the business of business is that things go wrong all the time. So if you're in a business that's going right all the time, maybe you are not in the right business. It's too easy. Business is tough. And if it's not tough, maybe you should be doing something else. So we do these things, but we are in a race. We are competitors. You're always trying to strive for something. But in that, there's an amazing grace that comes from being able to love people, even in a context where things are difficult. So one of the things that I've noticed in business, and I'll say this to you as an experience or something that I have observed, in a lot of the cases when you have to make a decision, you have to go into a contract or a business relationship with someone, the first thing that you judge is not the quality of the idea. You judge the quality of the person that you're going to business with. It doesn't matter how good the idea is. The most important thing is judge the character of the person first. I've had situations where someone comes and gets asked, should I deal with this person? What do you think about them? And by the way, in business, we do this quite a lot. We will investigate first. And sometimes we will not ask the people that are directly you have put as your references. We ask the people that are not your references. And we say, we know you know this person. What do you think about them? And you know what the greatest testimony is? When someone speaks well of you when you're not in the room. Yeah. And sometimes it's someone you don't even know. And they will say, I heard about you. And these are real life scenarios, and this happens all the time. We ask, so this person, so even when we're hiring someone, do you know we also do reference checks and say, you know, they've put these people as their references, but actually I know someone who knows them. They go to the same church. Let me ask them, what do you think of this person? And you know what the answer is sometimes? Don't even go there. This actually happens. They'll say, yes, they are very good at what they do, but this is not the person you want to be in business with. So character matters. And one of the things D.L. Moody says is, out of 100 men, one will read the Bible, the other 99 will read the Christian. So many of the decisions that people make about their faith are based on what other people, particularly for us who proclaim to be Christians, what we do matters, because that's the only time some people are ever going to encounter Christ in their life. And in the workplace, some people will not even come to a Sunday service like this, but they will go to work and they will encounter us in our workplaces. And that is the only opportunity that they will have to believe that this stuff that we speak about on a Sunday is real. If Christ is formed in our hearts and is real to us, we will make decisions, we will make choices and sacrifices in the way we make decisions that will reflect Christ even in our businesses. The next point, so I've said the work is relational. And I've spoken about relationships. The next point I would like to make is, in work is a place of witness. It is the place at which we have our greatest witness. And the reason for that is, it is one of the places that we spend the greatest amount of time. So we wake up every day, we spend most of our day, Monday to Friday, and even sometimes Saturday, and even beyond, working hours. We are at work. It is our place, our greatest pulpit. So preachers have this pulpit, but most of us don't have this pulpit. Our work is our pulpit. So sometimes people go to work because they want to earn a living. And people will go and work and they'll get paid at the end of the month. Do you realize that is the lowest level of calling, to work for a living? Once you understand that your greatest ministry is going to be in your work, it ceases to be about earning a living. And you become really, really deployed in the mission field and what God has called you to do. Colossians 3:23-24 has this to say: whatever, it doesn't say some of the things, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters, since you know you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So the last part of that says, whatever you do, you are effectively serving the Lord. So if Christ is formed in us, we consider what we do as what Christ has formed in us and what God has placed in our hearts to do. And sometimes we come across situations where we have to make choices around money. Money is one of those gods that will be all-consuming, and it has the same effect on all of us. I think if anyone tells you that I'm incorruptible, money does not corrupt me, they're probably lying to you. We are all corruptible. What we need to do, though, is to be able to guard our hearts. And when we come here on a Sunday and we hear these values of the Christian life, and they are expressed in a way that we resonate with us and we ingrain them, we become less corruptible. Not incorruptible, we become less corruptible. And when Paul says these words, and these are words that when you hear them, it sounds easy, but it's much harder than it is. And that's from Acts 20, verses 32-35, where it says, I've not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. You yourselves know that these hands of mine have supplied my own needs and the needs of my companions. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus, who said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. So Paul sets the standard for us, not an easy standard. And I think we must always be continually seeking God. God, am I becoming corrupted by this God of this world? Because money is a God of this world. And we constantly have to guard our hearts and to seek revelation in what God wants us to do. In our work as witness, and I love C.S. Lewis, and he writes this great book called The Weight of Glory. He says, the load or the weight or burden of my neighbor's glory should be put daily on my back. You see the weight of responsibility that each and every one of us carries for the person sitting next to you. So look around at the people to your left and to your right and think about these words. The load or weight or burden of my neighbor's glory should be put daily on my back. So imagine that. That is the responsibility that God gives us as a witness, even in the workplace, that we must be the ones to look out and to ensure that the neighbor, and neighbor here is used probably in the reference to the person next to you, but it's used very extensively. It's all the people that you're encountering in all of life. So work is where we witness and where we have our greatest witness. One of the things that I do when I'm invited to a conference or to speak, usually they invite you as a speaker, and then they will read out to say, just like Moose says, oh, Roy was at Avenues in 19, you're revealing my age, Moose. I don't know why you had to go there. It was yesterday, yeah. So, they'll say, this is this person, this is what they have done. At the end of it, I always make sure to say, I am a Christian, I am a child of God. And what I've noticed it does is, and many people don't do this when, you're speaking at a secular conference, it's nothing to do with church. But I've found that it's a different kind of witness. You declare who you are up front, and people start to resonate with who you are differently. So there was one occasion where I think I was at a conference. I was due to, speak about something, nothing related to church or anything. It was actually about auditing and accounting and all these kinds of things. And the guest of honor was the president, His Excellency E.D. Mnangagwa, and he was about to come up. And I think the organizers had not made provision for somebody to pray for the meeting. And I think they suddenly said, we need someone to pray. The meeting is about to start. And because I had in my bio that I'm a Christian, they said, would you like to come up and pray as the president comes up? And I said, definitely. You don't miss such opportunities when you're in missions. Like, God, this is the opportunity that I have. And you have those opportunities. And what I found is you declare who you are. The other opportunity I had is when the evangelist, I think his name is Andrew Palau, came to Zimbabwe. There was a business breakfast, and they invited leaders, and they wanted a business leader to speak about their faith. And I was invited for 10-15 minutes to speak about why my faith was important to me in the business space. So I was saying recently that I've done this preach so many times in so many different contexts because it becomes a witness. When you just declare who you are wherever you are, people start to say, we would like give you an opportunity to express who you are. Those opportunities start presenting themselves. That has been my witness as I've continued to worship God. So the second point I made to you is that work is witness. The third point I will make, and probably the final point, is work is worship. So turn to your neighbor and say, work is worship. So I loved how the band led us this morning. Isn't it so great to come every Sunday and hear Nyasha and the team and everyone just lead us so amazingly in worship, and just have those truths re-ingrained in our hearts. Those words that we sing, they're not just words. They are truths that we believe. It's a declaration of who we are. So as we declare those, and thank you, Nyasha and team, you led us so well. Thank you very much. When we say work is worship, we do things because we believe it matters to God. And one of the things we talk about at the Hangout, if you don't know about the Hangout, please get to know about it. It's an amazing platform for young adults, next-gen leaders, to be equipped in their faith. is we talk about something we call purpose. And purpose, simply put, is what did God make for you to do? And each and every one of us has a purpose. Some will say, I don't know my purpose. What is my purpose? But remember this, if it is the one thing you were made to do, it is the one thing you must get to know. And I love this about a quote from someone I met recently, a gentleman called Rob Glover. I met him through Steve Tibbet. He's done some amazing work in terms of fostering of children and getting children adopted into families in China. And I think the number is going to millions of children who have been brought into forever families. And he says this, there are few rare occasions in life when events seem to conspire in a profound and extraordinary way. In those moments, God pulls back the curtain of his plans. You are clearer on your life's purpose and destiny. And what resonated with me about that statement is, when your purpose arrives, and I'll use that term, you have no doubt what it is. You can search, you can look for whatever context, you read these books, 10 ways to do this, your life will be better. As we get into the new year, there'll be new resolutions and new things that you purpose to do. But when your purpose really arrives and you know that God has placed you where you need to be, do you know that you will not be waiting for a paycheck at the end of the month? And what you do, you will wake up inspired to do it. You will not do it because it is a labor, it is work. Because when we say work, it has this connotation of it is hard. After the fall, work became hard. You will eat from the sweat of your brow. But when God has put you in a place where your purpose intersects with your destiny and what eternity God has placed in front of you, then it means that it's no longer work. It's your place of purpose. It's your place of destiny. So when you go to work, and this is something you must ask yourself, is this the place of my destiny? But I will also say this about work, is that when you are in any place, God has put you there. Don't think you are in any place because it is a coincidence. And when you consider your purpose or the place that God has placed you as a place of your mission, your whole outlook on what you do and how you do it changes entirely. So think of work as worship. We worship through the things that we do and how we honor God in the work that we are doing. And when we honor God with the things that we have and the work that we're doing, the fulfillment that comes from it, just like Rob Glover says, it's like a curtain has been pulled back. And you understand, I am now at the place where destiny has called me to be. And it is not a coincidence. So I will leave you with this and think about this very purposefully. And it's a simple statement. Every role, whether you're a clerk, whether you're a mother, whether you are working in government, whether you're working in civil society, wherever you're working, every role is a mission field when viewed from God's perspective. So wherever you are, that is your mission field. There is a group of people I've come to know recently, and I'll play a little clip from a webinar that we had with a hangout with a gentleman called Lloyd Reeb. Lloyd Reeb is a Christian. He's written quite a number of books and started, I think, the Halftime Institute, which talks about your purpose in the second half of your life. If you're 40 and above, or nearing 40, you're probably in the second half of your life. And you need to be thinking about your impact in that second half of your life. It is different to the first half of your life. And one of the things they say is they've started what they call the 100X initiative, which talks about, and the 100X comes from the parable of the sower, where God can increase, 100-fold what the sower has sown. And what 100X does is they bring business people together, professional, creatives, entrepreneurs, and they spark something deeply biblical. And they call it creative obedience. And what that means is really just being intentional about what God has done in our lives. And as a professional, what I realize, and one of the things that they really amplify, is God has given me platforms. God has given me networks. And God has given me a profession. And I can use that for His glory. And I can use it to impact what the purposes of the church are in my time and in the context that I serve. And it's something that I'm coming to learn and something that I've come to appreciate a lot more, perhaps in recent years. Because a lot of what I do in my work situation is I spend a lot of my time just solving problems. So I'm just a if I had to design my own job description, it would just say problem solver. And there are problems everywhere. And because of that, I realized that I can use that, my platform of what I've learned within my workspace, to solve problems even on a kingdom level, on a kingdom perspective. And one of the things that I'm really, really enjoying is leading the Antioch team and some of the work that we're doing with Antioch. And I'll speak a little bit more about that. But I just wanted us to play the little clip from Lloyd Reeb.
Buildings in Canada near Ottawa. And Patrick Kelly was a well-known developer in Canada. He was considering moving into this building, and I went to see him in his home. I walked up 8 steps to this big, beautiful white home, and I walked in, and it was silent. He took me all around his house and showed me pictures of buildings he had built all over Canada. He built the first indoor mall in Toronto. And we went through the sale process. I walked out the door. I was so excited. Patrick Kelly has decided to move into my retirement community. And at the top of the stairs, on my way out, I thought to myself, if I stay focused and I work hard, I could be just like him one day. But by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I said to myself, if I am not careful, I'm going to end up like him someday. It turned out there were no pictures. There were no people in those pictures. They were just buildings.
So what Lloyd is saying there is, work is worship, because at the end of it all, once we are done with this life, we may be very successful in building impressive things, but at the end of it, it will be meaningless and empty, unless we make our work a place of mission, a place of purpose, a place where destiny intersects what eternity has called us to be. That clip is part of a webinar that we hosted, was with Jacob and Scott and others, which you can find on YouTube, and we'll share it. But it really talks about what purpose is all about, and what, as business people particularly, and Lloyd is a multimillionaire businessman in the States, and he's someone we've come to know, and who is one of the people we hope we will continue to engage in, and who we've got a lot that we can learn from. But as we do that, one of the things I've realized is there are business people out there who are going for God in an amazing way. And I think there's a lot that we can learn. So what I am learning as well is to invest my time in learning the purposes of God for my life and the purposes of God for my station where God has placed me, and realizing that I can be more effective if I am intentional in realizing that where I am is a place where God wants me to serve, and it's a platform that God has given me for my worship, my witness, and for my relationships that I have. So this is who we are. So one of the things that's happened in the last few years is we received a prophecy, and that prophecy was for us to set sail. And we've really invested time in seeking God in what does this mean for us. And what it has meant is we have gathered a group of about 60 business people within this church, and I have the privilege of leading that team. And what I enjoy about that group of people is their faith, and it's one way in which, even in our professional capacities, we've found a way to serve within the church and directly impacting what God is doing. So one of the dreams I have is when we go to that first meeting at Westgate and we've launched the third site, wouldn't that be a great moment in just seeing how prophecy has been spoken and how God works out his purposes through people like you and me. So we have this team that numbers about 60 people, and I don't know power that's disappeared of some of the people who are investing in this work. Amazing people in their professions and in what they are doing. And it's only one context in which we can serve and where people are really, really putting themselves out. And I just want to point this out because a lot of us will say, I do not have the time. I am just so busy. I have so many things to do. And that is most of us. But do you realize that if you don't have the time, you're probably the most needed person in the room, in that conversation. But if work is your mission, you will get the time to invest in what God is doing. So that becomes your priority as someone who is working to say, how am I using what God has entrusted to me? My profession, my children, my motherhood, everything that I'm doing. How is that serving the purposes and the mission of God? So I will end with this, and this is us. This is who we are as a people. We value our faith and the position it gives us to influence in education, in medicine, in family. We value work as an act of worship, where every act of work is an act of mission, approached from a kingdom perspective. We believe our influence matters. Remember what D.L. Moody says, that many will read the Christian, they will not read the Bible. Our influence matters. The things that we do and that we purpose to do matter. And one thing that we must always remember is to be intentional. It would not happen just by chance that God will use us. We really need to seek God and to seek what God is doing. So as a people, we do not separate the sacred and the secular. Our pulpits are not just on a Sunday. They are from Monday to Saturday. And the Bible says this, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Are you a city on a hill? Can your light be hidden? Is it irrepressible? Or everywhere you go, the light of Christ is shining through you. Church, that's my message for you today, and I'd like to just ask you to stand, and then we'll just pray as we close.